Okay, fine. So what we're talking about this week is the question of science and halacha. Right? What happens when halacha makes certain assumptions about science, which turn out to be problematic? Right? As we mentioned before, right? Psak halacha is the interface between theoretical halacha and reality. So sometimes the problems are going to be not fundamentally in the theoretical halacha, but are going to be in the realia. So before we get to the classic case, right, there are a few classic Gemaras everyone quotes. Before we get to a case of a mistake, the first thing everyone quotes is this following Gemara in Pesachim. The first source, Gemara has a debate between Chachmei Yisrael and Chachmei Umas Ha'olam. How exactly does the sun relate to the earth? So the Gemara says, Chachmei Yisrael Omrim, B'yom Chama Mahalechas Lamata Min Harakia, U'Valayla Lamala Min Harakia. So the Jewish sages said that during the day the sun goes underneath the sky, underneath the firmament, and at night it goes above it. V'Chachmei Umas Ha'olam Omrim, B'yom Chama Mahalechas Lamata Min Harakia. During the day it goes under, and then at night it goes underneath the ground. On Amar Rebbe, they seem to be more right than us, because during the day, natural springs are cold, and at night they're hot. So it would seem that the sun goes underneath the earth. Now, I don't know, right? Neither of these are quite accurate historically, scientifically, but that's not the point, right? The point is, everyone points to this Gemara. But it's a case where we're talking about reality, we're not talking about halacha, we're talking about theoretically what is happening in reality. Chachmei Yisrael have one position, Chachmei Umas Ha'olam have another position, and we are modeh to the non-Jewish sages. So many people point to this Gemara and say, well, this is a raya that, look, if halacha was based on faulty science, so then, you see, we have no fundamental problem admitting that we're wrong when it comes to science, so we would change the halacha in accordance with the science, because we have no vested interest, we have no, we're not like ideologically attached to our scientific claims. We are obviously to the theoretical halacha, but not to our scientific claims. And, if it turns out that our reality was wrong, that doesn't mean that we were wrong about the halacha. It means we judged halacha to the best of our abilities based on the science that we know, and it turns out we're wrong. Other people respond that this is not good, and we'll see these sources, and say, no, there's a fundamental difference between scientific fact that has no bearing on halacha and scientific fact which does. Why that would be, we'll get to, but that's basically, right, the framing of the whole issue, right, is while we can admit that in theory we can say, look, we were wrong about science, we're not experts in science, when it comes to halacha, is that equally true? Okay. So, let's look. First source, this is I use these words too much because I'm talking about Rodenzweig, but it's the locus classicus, right? Titania. So the Gemara says like this, if you kill a louse on Shabbos, kahorek gamal b'Shabbos. So the first day it says it's like killing a camel, meaning you're chayav from netilas neshama. Maskol Rav Yosef said that can't be. Ad kan lo pligi Rabbanan leid Rabbi Elazar lebekina. De'eina paro verava. The Rabbanan say you're not chayav, and they think that by a louse you're not chayav because it's not paro verava. It doesn't procreate. It is spontaneously generated. But other bugs, they would agree that you're chayav because they do procreate. And both of them learn it from the paradigm of rams. Rav said, look, anything I kill, I'm chayav. I'll call sheish ben netilas neshama. So anything I kill, that's considered the yisur daraisa of netilas neshama. Rabbanan savri ke'elim, ma'elim depar neravin, I've called depar rava. And the Chum say no, the category of rams teaches not that anything that's alive, you're chayav if you kill it on Shabbos, but anything that procreates, to exclude that which spontaneously generates, being lice. Slight problem, anyone can chime in here, the slight problem is, lice don't spontaneously generate, okay. Right, this is wrong. And, to make matters worse, as I just put in brackets here, right, this is Nifsak in the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, right? You are allowed to kill lice on Shabbos because they don't procreate. Let's look at another few examples, and then we'll get to approaches. Another problem, treifos. Right, there's a halachic category called treifa of an animal and or human being that is not viable. So that animal or human being is now not entirely alive. Right, what exactly parameters are that is a little bit complicated, right? The Tosfos Ridge says in Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed Vav that really someone who's treifa is alive, just the Inyan with Tzicha, right? If you kill a treifa, so the technicality that you're not chayiv misa. For an animal, if an animal is a treifa, shchita isn't materit, and it's treif. And that's where the word comes from. It's treif. Okay? So, what are the treifos? So, the Gemara, as a case, it lists all the treifos, and one place says we learned it from Moshe. So, I just put the Rambam here. The Rambam says, this list of what Chazal said a treifa was, we shouldn't add to it at all. Because anything that happened to these animals, besides for that which Chazal mentioned, and that Chazal agreed that these could live. Right? It doesn't matter what science tells us. Right? These are the treifos. Anything Chazal said can live, can live. Anything they said will die. Even if Chazal said that this is going to die, even if we see that it doesn't die, all you have is what the Chacham say. So the Rambam very explicitly says, look, it doesn't matter what science says, and even though the category of treifa theoretically means that which can't live, doesn't matter. We go by the Mesorah. The next example, which is even more disturbing, just 1 second, I'll get this a little bit later, but I have 3 more sources. Okay. Amar Mar Velo Safek Docha Shabbos. We're talking about Pikuach Nefesh on Shabbos. So the Gemara says you can. There are cases when you can't be Docha Shabbos. What case is that? Lasui Mai Lasui Adutan Rabbanan Ben Shiva Machalan of Shabbos Ben Shmona Ein Machalan of Shabbos. If a baby is born in the 7th month of conception, you can be Machal Shabbos because it's viable. In the 8th month, it's not. Safek ben Shiva, Safek ben Shmona, and Machal of Shabbos. If it's Safek 7th or 8th, you also can't be Machal Shabbos. Ben Shmona, Reu Ke'eben Vasar Taltalo. And if a baby is born in the 8th month from conception, it's like a rock. We assume it's going to die. You have to leave it there. It's mukta, right? It's not viable, so therefore you can't save it. Right? Now, this also is based on faulty science. It's not just us. If you want, there was an article last year in Virapo Yerape 4, where, I forget who it was, but somebody in Einstein went through the historical background of this. Right? This wasn't just Jews, the Greeks and the Romans, they all had their reasons why an 8th month baby cannot live. But what we have in front of us is 3 examples, right? Lice, right? Chazal say you can kill lice on Shabbos because they don't procreate. 2 is treifos, where we have a list of treifos which ostensibly is based on whether or not they can live or not. And then you have the case of Shabbos, where we say a baby born in the 8th month from conception, which admittedly is hard to define, which is part of the problem, but cannot be saved on Shabbos. The assumption, again, that the baby can't live. There's 3 cases which are contradicted by science. So the question is, what do we do with them? Now, there are other ones, right? Chazal have all the medications you're supposed to take, right? Rosh Hashanah already said ignore it, right? It doesn't mean anything. But let's focus on these examples and the different types of responses you get. Yeah, Matt.
Just in terms of the lice case, I was recently discussing with someone, how does Chazal deal with this case in the Gemara, which implies that certain things can spontaneously generate? That there is at least a strong view, at least in medieval Jewish thought, that we believe so strong that everything has a first cause, and that's our basis for understanding what Kriyat HaOlam. So how are they so comfortable with assuming that halacha? There's certain things that just poof out of nowhere.
Well, they don't poof out of nowhere. They just poof out of dirt. Right? They spontaneously generate out of dirt. They don't come out of nowhere. They don't. Right? There's still conservation of.
So still yesh meyesh.
Right. I mean, there's still conservation of mass, according to them. There's just not conservation of life force, or something like that. I don't get it. I don't know. Whatever. They thought it came from sweat. I don't know. Sweat and dirt. Okay. Fine. So what do we do? Right? What do we do when halacha contradicts science? So first, theoretically, right? What are our options? Right? Let's go through our theoretical options.
Deny the science.
Deny the science. Great. Number 2.
Change the halacha.
Change halacha. Possibility 3.
Case by case.
Case by case. Possibility 4.
Somehow it all fits.
Keep the halacha even while admitting the science is wrong and figure out some explanation, right? Those are pachot or terror options, right? And that is exactly the options we're going to see. Okay, well, before I get to it, you'll just look. We're not going to cover everything, but if you look at just the last page, you'll see I have other resources here. If you want a brief summary, which is very fair, Gil Student has a summary of these. In an article he wrote called Halachic Responses to Scientific Developments, just search it online, where he basically deals with 3 of these possibilities. Denial, change of halacha, or case-by-case solutions. Right? Basically everything Rabbi Slifkin has... You have the third page?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like the bottom of the third page, right? Where I put resources. Right? Basically everything Rabbi Slifkin has written is about these topics. I haven't read through most of it, but I've read through parts of it. But speaking of Rabbi Wieder, what Rabbi Wieder gave me, what he thinks is the most substantive discussion to date, is source 3. There's a journal called B'chol Derechecha Da'eu, and there's a back and forth between about 4 or 5 people on the parameters of this. It's quite fascinating. Anyone who wants it, come over to me. I'll give you the PDF later. And the last one, if you really want to do a thorough job, and this I found this week, and it was very exciting, is I think it's the dissertation of Neria Gutel called Hishtanut HaTvayim B'Halacha, the changing of nature in halacha, which is substantive enough that, as we'll see later, in his Haskama, Reb Nebenzahl went through it line by line and gave his comments, and Reb Zalman Nechemia Goldberg wrote an entire kuntris to make comments line by line, not like critiques, but like comments, substantive comments, because he really did quite a phenomenal job. Everything he does is phenomenal. Okay, so let's see some of the main sources. So probably the most quoted source is a sefer that I have never heard of except for in this context, is the sefer Pachad Yitzchak of Rabbi Yitzchak Lepranti. And there he asked this question. He turns to his Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda Brill, and he says, Chazal say that lice are spontaneously generated and therefore we can kill them on Shabbos. I have a kasha. They're not spontaneously generated. So, he says, right, Yitzchak Lapanti turns to his Rabbi and says, you know what I think? Aniyat Sayir HaKotev. I, the person writing, say, Ilavd Mistafina. If I had the chutzpah to say it, which translate rabbinic language, right? Ilavd Mistafina, right? Or Lulei de Mistafina means I have a chiddush, right? Right? Lulei de Mistafina means I would have said it, means I'm going to say it, and it's a chiddush, right? Lefiani is daiti, is I have a big chiddush, right? Yes? Okay. Right? Lulei divrei magadoshim, if it weren't for the fact that you said this, I would have said this, is a polite way of saying you're wrong, right? You just have to know rabbinic terminology, right? So Ilavd Mistafina, if I would have the chutzpah, I would say, Amina dibizmaninu, in our time, shechachmei hatolado, ibitu, vira'u, v'yadu, v'kadvu, that the scientists looked and saw and know and wrote the kol balcha yiyeh mishi yeh heve min habitzim. Everything is created by, is born, right? It has eggs of some sort, right? Inside, outside, something, it procreates, right? This is just true. It's been proven, right? Uvda, imgein. So therefore, shomer nafshu yirachek mehem. Anyone who cares about halacha should keep away from killing lice. V'lo yaharog, lo parush, lo kina. Don't kill a louse, don't kill a flea. What do you do? Right? Why would you put yourself in a situation of safek chiyuv chatas? And this I would have said, and I said, look, if Klal Yisrael would listen to the nations of the world, they would admit. And he quotes the Gemara that we did at the beginning of Pesach, and he says, look, we know, we don't have any philosophical claim about knowing all of science. So just like we admitted to them that they were more right about how the sun goes around the earth, okay, they were both wrong, it's not the point, right? We admit here also that they know we don't. Fine. Now you can't, you're going to tell me I'm nicht from. I'm very from. I'm not being mekel chas v'shalom rachman al litzlan. I'm being machmir. Right? You can't possibly critique me for being machmir. V'chachmi Yisrael shechazru v'hodol chachmi uman ta'olam b'inyan mazel kavua v'gal z'chozor horu be'etzma glav kol milik devas amr b'gmar b'pi ha'kabalahim. And now he makes a fundamental philosophical claim, which is, not everything in the Gemara is Mesorah, meaning science. Right? When Chazal say something about science, this is not halacha Moshe Misinai. They looked into the science, they were responsible poskim, they went to the best science they had in their day. It turns out they're wrong, but fine. They spoke from human knowledge. Because if everything they said, then they would never admit, right? You don't admit you're wrong if you have a Mesorah, right? I don't care if the Chachmei Umat Olam kick and scream and tell you that the sun goes one way. If God told you otherwise, you would listen to God. Right? But the fact that they're willing to admit their mistakes in science tells you that they have no Mesorah for it. They're just talking as, right, people. And because if they were talking from Mesorah, they should have retracted. So he makes the philosophical claim, which is, we have no philosophical claim, we have no ideological claim that Chazal knew science. They did the best they can, but if they're wrong, they're wrong. So what's the problem? And therefore he paskins the halacha, you can't kill lice on Shabbos. His Rebbe responds, Rabbi Yehuda Brill, and he says, no. He says, do not change halacha that was established by Chachmei Yisrael. You shouldn't look for explanations, whatever. Because the halacha was established by Yisrael, that's it. Over. Don't start looking to the science. It's wrong. V'od edut ne'amana etzli as goes to Gemara the Psachim al inyan im agalgal kavua umazal chozer shechazu chachmei Yisrael boso asman v'horel chachmei olam v'sov davar acharei me'ot rabot mishanim kol atchonon kol tochnim me'mura olam b'chakiratam al pi nisyon ma'mofet shebo l'divrei chachamei v'kavleinu akadmonit. Right? And he makes an even more ambitious claim. He said, you'll tell me that Chazal admitted to the Chachmei Olam about how the sun goes around the world. No! I have a Mesorah that after a few hundred years, they realized that they were right in the first place and they should never have retracted. Chas v'shalom, they were never wrong. And he ignores the Gemara in Psachim, right? He just, no, never happened. Right? Yes, they made a mistake, but okay. Then they realized they never should have thought they made a mistake. Chachmei Yisrael never make mistakes. They thought they made a mistake. I know better. They didn't make mistakes. Therefore, you paskin. What?
When was this written?
1600s, 16th century, 1500s. Yeah, don't worry. This is not like 50 years ago. No, this is like 500 years old. We shouldn't change what we pass in our Gemara. Even if all the winds of science and whatever blow and try to blow us down, we should stand strong and always listen to our halacha. Ki ruach Hashem diber banu, because the voice, the Spirit of the Lord speaks in us. Therefore, the scientist is an idiot. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. Right, the secular scientists, they just see the periphery, they see the surface, they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the depths. So the halacha is what it is. And therefore we ignore science, period. We are right, they are wrong. That's all there is to it. Right, so here, right, already 500 years ago, whatever it is, a few hundred years ago, I forget exactly what year it's written, right? You have the two extremes, right? Pachad Yitzchak, Yitzchak Lepranti says, change. Yehuda Brill says, never change, right? Okay. If you look next source, the Orchos Shabbos, there's a wonderful modern sefer on Orchos Shabbos, by two Talmidim Rabbi Yashiv. So they write like this: the Gemara of poskim mevar shemot alarokinim b'Shabbos hayot bein lam chashivut shel bal chayim keim shenim parvim v'rabim. The Gemara, Shulchan Aruch, everyone says you're allowed to kill alaus on Shabbos because they don't procreate. Amnam, like Abei Arikas Kidim Shebe'amenu, but in our days, Yesham orim detov lihimanamikach. People say it's better not to. Keman shekim shememenu yadua sheim parim v'ravim, because our lice do. V'efshar shein elu osan kinashish gemara. Right, so they start with one of the, I forget what you called it, but one of the methods to make everything work together is what we call nishtana hateva. Nature changed. Like, we don't say that Chazal were wrong. It's like they had lice which grew out of sweat. We don't. So our lice are not their lice. Our lice are their fleas. I don't know. Right? And therefore, the halacha, he says halacha should change. But ideologically, right, he's bound to the assumption that Chazal can never be wrong, right? So far, right, we have the extremes. We have Rabbi Jonanthan who says that Chazal can be wrong in science. You have Yehuda Brill who says they can't be wrong in science. And therefore, they say either halacha does or doesn't change, respectively. The Aruch HaShabbos suggests that perhaps you can say a middle position, which is called Nishtana Teva, which is they were right, but we do pay attention to science, and therefore we can hold our ideological claim that Chazal were always right, while simultaneously allowing halacha to respond to reality. Just one second. Let's finish Aruch HaShabbos, and I want to show you just what he does with this exactly. He says, next line, he says, "Inyan katan sheish b'roshu kinam etzaros v'zorei ha'ara." So then he said, but what about if someone has lice in his hair? So look in the footnote. So look at the next page. So first he quotes, "V'sever bachad yitzchak kazav lachmer b'zeh, v'chein kazav Torah Shabbos, v'chein shamanu v'shem agon Rabbi Yasher shlita d'yesh leimana b'zeh." Right. So he quotes, "V'chein shamanu v'shem agon Rosh Hashanah." We should leifchayim hitir zos v'chein shamanu v'shem agon Rosh Hashanah Zalman Orbach. Right. So he says. First, he quotes Rabbi Yitzchak Lepranti, who's Oser, and he says Rabbi Yasher paskin to Asrit. Shlomo Zalman was Matir. We'll get to Shlomo Zalman. Memchesto, he says, Linyan Katana, Shakina Mitzarozozel Meod, but if a child has lice and it bothers him a lot, so Shamanu Me'agon, Rabbi Yasher Shlita, or Navzatel, Demutter Liraseis Al Rosho, Chomer Kotel Kinim, Demakom Tsar Gadol Yishim Lismoch Al Pashtos Dina de Gamar Lahatirzos. So then you can put a cream in the hair that will kill the bugs, because b'makom tsar, we can rely on the pshuto shel Gemara, right? So what you see from Eliashiv is sort of another type of middle position, which is we're machmer misafek, right? Right? He's misupag, right? Maybe we should be machmer because maybe nishtanu atefa, but since the Gemara says it's mutter, so maybe there's some other reason why we should make it, even if science is right, and Chazal were wrong, which we'll get to, right? And therefore he comes with a middle position, which is we treat it as a suffix l'chorma, but therefore there could theoretically be things that would push us in the opposite direction, right? I couldn't, because of tsar, kill a dog, right? But I could, because of tsar, kill kinim, because maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. Okay, we had two questions. No, bye.
Just on the first bit of this, when you confront something like this, do we say that they, as far as answer, that they really believe it, or that they have this ideological framework and then they work everything around that?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell whether they believe it or they don't. I mean, I assume they believe what they mean what they say, and they say what they believe. I assume. Now, are there certain communities, right, who... I mean, look, Nishtana HaTeva, sometimes you have to wonder, right? Because Nishtana HaTeva is a way of saying, look, I'm always going to allow halacha respond to science, but I'm never going to say Chazal are wrong, right? So that often is an ideological position, right? That I don't know whether I doubt that everyone who says Nishtana HaTeva believes it. Sometimes it's just a convenient way of saying that I don't know whether Chazal were right or wrong, but la halacha, I know what the halacha is, and it's not like what they said, right? That Nishtana HaTeva can be looked at as a cop-out position. I'm sure there are also people who believe it, right? There are definitely people who believe it. There are definitely people who don't. They use it as Shema Nishtana HaTeva or something like that. So I think it depends. But often, I think they do believe it. Okay. So far, right, what do we have? Just taking this test case. So we have, again, one extreme, which is always take science. On the other extreme, we have always take Chazal, Pshuto K'mashmal. Then we have the possibility that, right, let's assume that the halacha will respond to reality, but ideologically we'll say Chazal are right, which is the Nishtana HaTeva position, right? And then there's the sort of another middle position, which is Rabbi Yashiv, that we're machmir, because we're misupag Nishtana HaTeva, something like that. But if push comes to shove, I'm not fully convinced that Chazal are wrong, for whatever reason, right? I'm not convinced, and therefore, push came to shove, I can be makil, like Pshuto, like Gemara. So these are already setting up the range. Okay, next source. This is also often quoted. So this is, if you look in the Michtav Meliyahu, the Michtav Meliyahu was edited by Aryeh Carmel. So in a footnote, he quotes a Mesorah from Rav Dessler, which is often quoted, which is the next source. Ra'iti l'shom kan ma sheshamati b'feish mi'kadosh shel Adonenu Morenu Rabbeinu HaRav Dessler Zatzal. Although dinim achadim shadamim shenidnu einam lefi hametziut shenitgala b'mechkar tivim b'darot ha'achronim. All right, what did Rav Dessler say about cases when science changes? So he says, halacha never changes. Why? Not because science is right, but because science is wrong, but because we don't really understand why the halacha was that way in the first place. We should cling to the halacha. Dulo k'divrei lapranti zatzal b'pachad yitzchak yertzeda asura shorotz lahachmer shol laro kina b'shavos kevin shizbar b'zmano l'shum safek shekina bar b'ravim ha'yidei zachon ha'keva k'chol shar b'alech. I am not like the pachad yitzchak. V'atam amar kevin shizbarer b'zmano v'amar adonim marim zatzal ki era halacha yadu chazal midorei doros. But binyana hezberim ativiyim lo hezber mechayev adin elahefech adin mechayev hezber v'atam shemuzkar b'gemara eino atam echidi ha'efshari. This is a very fancy lamdas, right? Rav Dessler claims the following: yes, Chazal can be wrong about science, but you thought that when Chazal asked the question, "Can you kill a kina on Shabbos?" they were actually asking the question, but no, they had a Mesorah. You're allowed to kill kinim on Shabbos. And they thought the reason you're allowed to kill a kinim on Shabbos is because they don't procreate. It turns out they do procreate. So Chazal's reason was wrong, and that he's willing to say. But halacha is passed down. The halacha is true regardless. Now, what's the obvious philosophical problem with Rav Dessler? Yes? Yeah.
Or is he saying the halacha was created by them because of the science, or is he saying they got the halacha?
It's not entirely clear. It sounds like he thinks they got the Mesorah, right? They knew this was the halacha, and then they came up with explanations.
Is he then saying that for all or most of what Chazal say, they really just attributing, whatever they...
Right, so the first problem is just philosophically, it's a very strange thing to say that in general, right, all these arguments in Chazal are spurious. They don't really mean it. They really knew what the halacha was, and they're just trying to backtrack every single case. More importantly, locally, what's the problem? Why doesn't it seem that way? Because it was a machlokas in the Gemara, right? The Gemara had a machlokas. In fact, both Shitas in the Gemara assumed that lice didn't procreate. They argued about whether the operative category was animals that procreate or animals that live, right? So clearly it wasn't a Mesorah. But that being the case, right, Rav Dessler comes up with another middle position, which is we accept the possibility that Chazal can be wrong in science, but we deny the possibility that halacha is actually based on that science. Right? Chazal's halacha is based on Mesorah and not on halacha. Now this, again, is very strange in this case, but it doesn't seem that way in the Gemara. Okay. Two more sources.
Wait, what was it you said?
A few more sources, actually.
Were arguing about live versus procreate?
No, I mean both. The category of the halacha, right? If you look at the first Gemara, remember, right? They argue, right? Why should I be chayev? Because anything that loses life, that's netilas neshama. The other she said, no, it's only killing something which procreates, right? But they both agree on the science and they argue on the actual halacha. Okay, so next source, Shut Heichal Yitzchak. This is who's Heichal Yitzchak? Anyone? This is Yitzchak Alevi Herzog, right? Rav Herzog, okay, pretty recent, had a PhD, right? Very intelligent guy. Said Asofik Shehur Torer Behavi Leilahu Kanreach Shashal Netilas Neshama. Right? Again, he was asked this question. I get skipped down to the bold. Right? You know the question already. We've seen it 10 times. It says Amnama Madacha Dash Kafishia Duali Ena Modeh Be Ginirtoyo Spontaneous generation. Okay, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Spontaneous generation. Awal Anu Ein Lanu In Halacha Divrei Chazal. We, halacha, only have chazal. And therefore you can definitely kill lice on Shabbos, even if they don't cause you any trouble. I'm sorry, this is bacteria. And therefore he said, for the same svara, right, bacteria don't procreate, so we can kill them. Fine. Va'od, more importantly, eineni ro'et yesod l'isra l'amiz chidakim b'shabbat afil einam azikim hov einan nirim l'ayin klal. I can't possibly argue that killing bacteria would be killing because they're not seen by the eye. Ve'ena b'chal mamlechet bali chaim, so they're not in the world of animals. The kol malachas Shabbos me'amishkan lamadnu, and everything we learn from the Mishkan. Kamo she'amru sham gemara beplukta z'rein u'shneim lo ndu ela me'elim muvan sh'china zot in lachav klal sharik chidak b'shabbos yichayev o she'asra afilu midrabanan. Right, so he thinks, right, that you're allowed to kill a louse because the halacha is the halacha, and he thinks that for the same reason you're allowed to kill bacteria. Now the svara he sort of swallows here, but it's explicit in Shlomo Zalman. So I get it. Shlomo Zalman here. Okay. In Nebenzahl's Haskama to Sefer Hishtanu Teva says, Hagon Shlomo Zalman Shlita Noked B'Inan Kinam Halachu Chazal Lefi Maras Ha'ayin. Said, look, the halacha is nikba not on what is true, but on what seems to be true. Meaning halacha doesn't recognize things that happen at a certain level of just size. Right? Something that you don't see with the normal eye is simply not recognized by halacha, even if I admit that the science is wrong. Is right, rather. Chazal science is wrong. Right, Nebenzahl takes a different approach and says, no, nishtanu hateva. Okay. Right? So, again, to summarize, right, the range. We're just going to keep it in mind because there's a lot of possibilities. Right? All the way out here, right? Change, Chazal, right? This is a normal shayla. Chazal were assessing their science. It was wrong. We rejected. That is Pachad Yitzchak. Right? All the other extreme, everything the Chazal ever said, the halacha is al pi Mesorah, is Yehuda Brill, Rav Dessler, right? Over here. Okay? Then in the middle you have a few different positions, right? You have some people claim, look, Chazal could be wrong, but the halacha is right because Nishanu Ateva. Right? Or you assume, like Rosh Shlomo Zalman and the Heichal Yitzchak, that look, you just misunderstood the category. It doesn't mean it isn't preruveh at all. It means it isn't right? It doesn't procreate in such a way that the human eye can see, can perceive. And therefore, even if it's true that they do procreate, instead of bacteria, it doesn't matter. Halacha doesn't operate on that level. Right? So the halacha remains the same. While we recognize Chazal could be wrong about science, just in this case, that's not the point. You can come up with something like Rabbi Yashiv, which is a suffix position, which is we'll be machmir and assume that maybe Nishanu Ateva, maybe Chazal were wrong, whatever. But when push comes to shove, I don't really believe Chazal were wrong, either because science is wrong or because something like Rosh Shlomo Zalman. And so far, that's a range of our positions, right? Okay. Yet another one. Let's see how complicated this gets. Here I made it easy for you because the PDF was impossible anyways to read, so I might as well read the English. This Rosh Shechter quotes all the time. This is the Hagdama of Rav Moshe Shmuel Glasner in his Sefer Dor Revi'i to Mesachas Chulin. Read it in English. Due to the canonization of the oral law and writing the statement that, according to the law, the direct you shall go, right, even if they say right is left, meaning small, by which the Torah instructed that the minority of a given presentation is bound by the decision of the majority, applies now after the completion of the Mishnah, Talmud, and the like, also between generations. This means that if a generation subsequent to the finalization of the Mishnah discovers that the authors of the Mishnah erred, or similarly, if a generation subsequent to the completion of the Talmud finds that the authors of the Talmud erred, we remain with the consensus of the earlier ones, whether this result is stringency or legiancy. This is what the Sefer Chinuch writes, that it is better to tolerate one error in one law than to destroy, God forbid, the entire edifice. So here, he again makes the argument that halacha never changes. But what's his proof? Right here he gives a very interesting proof, which is not that Chazal can't be wrong, but the Pasuk didn't like them even when they're wrong. And he said, what's his proof? Look, if you remember back to our first class, right? can Chazal be wrong? Well, many Rishonim, in fact, most Rishonim and Achronim, thought that, yeah, Chazal could be wrong, and we're obligated to listen to them anyways, because otherwise the system collapses. So he says, if we have to listen to them, either when halacha is wrong, so why shouldn't we have to listen to them when science is wrong? It's the exact same thing, it's the same formal rule. We cannot deviate from that which they established as law in the Mishnah or Gemara, even regarding something based on science or on other disciplines. Consider also that we rule that one is not liable for killing a louse on Shabbat, and that it's permissible to eat fruit and cheese that have developed worms. Now, this is true. We poskin you can eat cheese that has worms that have never separated from them, because halachically we treat those worms as if they grew in the cheese, like from the trees. They're not actual bugs. I don't know why you would want to, but fine. Provided the worms are not separate from the fruit, these laws are founded upon the consensus of the sages that these insects spontaneously generated rather than through sexual reproduction. Now, in truth, the scientific consensus today is that there is no insect that does not procreate by means of eggs. Nevertheless, we shall not overturn the law, even in the name of stringency against the ruling and consensus of the sages. One's compelling need necessitates that the oral Torah be canonized for future generations. We do not have the authority to change even the slightest detail, which they decided and agreed upon, whether with regard to the explication of verses or matters relating to science. For all their Torah is holy to us, and one must not deviate from it. Now, right at the end, right, he suggests the possibility, right, again, he swallows it, that if we had a Sanhedrin, then we could change it, right? But his point is, at least now, the same way we're bound to Chazal if they make a halachic mistake, we're bound to them if they make a scientific mistake, because that is what you need for the unity of the system. Okay. Should we read through the last two sources? Okay, we'll quickly read through the last two sources, and then the rest is going to be outside, because I couldn't put all the Makaras. All I put here was the light stuff, and then we'll get to the other cases. Okay, the next is from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, right? And he just goes the, whatever, I won't read it inside, you can read it yourself, but he goes the route of saying that science is just wrong, right? He basically says, Lo ra'inu in raya, the fact that we haven't seen lice spontaneously generate doesn't mean they don't, right? Oh, we see eggs, okay, so they see eggs, but you don't know they don't spontaneously generate. Do you want to read inside? Should we read inside? Okay, you can read through it yourself. The last source here is Shevet HaKehati. This is Rav Shammai Kehati, recent tshuva. He said again, Matzadi Gamken B'Sefer Makor Chaim L'Chavaz Yar B'Kitzer Halachos Shekazav D'Sifro Aroch Heir Mizeh Amar Shechach Me'ateva Omrim Dekinim Shebarosh Peruvei Karchal Al Lo Zachinu L'Perish Aroch Shalo Vadi D'Chazal Vada Yadu Mizeh Da'Kol Ayagol L'Fneim El Tzarech Lomer D'Zman Chazal L'Kinim Shebarosh Lo Yo Peruvei Right again Nishanu Ateva Val Kain Nira L'Chora D'Yish L'Hachim Yer V'Lasar L'Arag L'Kinim Shebarosh Kevin Shem Param Rabim. And since it's based on Nishanu Ateva, so Bisman said we would be machmer. Okay. So this was a very quick summary of basically the range of positions that you have. By the Lice case, right? Ranging from the positions who say halacha changes, to halacha doesn't change, to halacha doesn't change because it was either it's a formal rule and even if it's wrong we have to accept it, or you misunderstood the rule, or all rules are really halacha moshe misina and the explanations are just right spurious, to sort of suffix positions which you found in Rebbe Yashiv. And this is basically Pachar Yoter, the discussion of lice. Yes?
If we say Nishana Ateva, can we make it by that?
Meaning, Nishana Ateva will come out of Chumrah, right?
Always?
Well, not always, but...
Like what about the 8 months?
Okay. So far, all we talked about was the lice, right? But if you remember, right, at the beginning we said, right, what are our choices? Right, halachically, our choices are, right, we had 4 choices, right? Denial of science, denial of, right, changing the halacha, right? Reinterpretation of the halacha, and then what was the first one? Case by case. Right, so far all we did was analyze one case. And that is the case of lice, which in a Hanami basically shows you the different positions that people take in general. But not always. So now, let's come back to the case of treifot. Okay? So, let's say I hold by lice that I look at the Gemara and I say it doesn't seem to be right that Ravari Kaplan's quotation of Dessler is correct. Right? That Gemara, it just doesn't seem that way. Right? There's an actual machlokes. They both agree that it's spontaneously generated. They have a machlokes about the nature of the halacha. Is it things which are premature? Is it things that have need to listen to neshama? It just doesn't sound like they had a Masorah. So therefore, I come down, which my tendency would be to do this, and say, look, it's usher. Right? My tendency is that this is a real mitzios machlokas. That's what it sounds like. It's a assumption based on mitzios, right? There's no Masorah. The Gemara argued about it. I don't know why this is a formal rule. In the case of lice, I really don't understand the shittas who say this was a formal rule passed down to Moshe, because look, it's a machlokas in the Gemara. So in a Chanam, we paskin that way. Right? And I don't particularly understand either the Dor Revi'i, because what do you mean that we accept their formal cases, right? Their formal halacha. Right? That's not true. There's not a formal halacha. The rule wasn't you're allowed to kill kinim. The rule was you're allowed to kill things which are not prei. Right? They were arguing about principles. Right? We're applying the principle the same way. It just happens to be that we know the mitzvahs to be different. I don't understand why we're bound to formal rules. So that's kinim. What about treifa? So what do you think? Does treifa logically follow the same rules as kinim? So let's look at the Rambam, right? What does the Rambam say? Right? Again, Ein lahosif al treifos elu klal. Shekol sherabeima lechaya o laof chutz me'elu shemanu chachmei daras harishonim v'eskim alein v'atedini Yisrael efsher shetechya v'afilu no dalanu v'derech harafua she'ein sofa lechya. Right? The way the Rambam formalizes the Gemara, and it seems to be all the way in the Gemara, is that treifot, right? Chazal thought that treifot was what? Simply the all-inclusive list of those things which, right, could not, were viable, were not viable, etc. Right, that was basically what they thought the list did. But the Rambam said, no. I mean, you look at the Gemara, it says this is halacha Moshe Sinai what a treifa is. The Rambam said, look, treifa is different. Treifa really is a Masorah, right? And you can actually have cases where the animal is going to live, but it's a treifa, or it's not going to live, and it's not a treifa. And this, when it comes to treifa, is pretty much pe'echad the poskim. Moshe Feinstein, Shlomo Zalman, the Chazon Ish, they all go to great lengths and say, look, I don't care what you say in general, it's beferish in the Rambam, that treifa at least, right? The Rambam isn't not mudar to the fact that there can be things which will live that are treifos. He knows very well the science could be wrong. But his point is, no, that's not how treifa worked. The Gemara used the lashon that kiblu me Moshe Rabbeinu Sinai. Right? This treifa is a Masorah. Now, admittedly, right, this is a little bit more complicated than it looks, because, as I mentioned before, right, there are two types of treifos. There are treifos of animals, and then there are treifos of human beings. Right? The nafkamina of a treifa of an animal is what? If it's kosher, right? Okay, very simple. So the Rambam says, look, for that, rules of kashrus, it's halacha Moshe Sinai, and therefore it doesn't change. And this really is the consensus of poskim. But what? What about treifos of human beings? Right? If you think someone's a treifa, what's a nafkamina? If you kill them, you're not chayav misa, right? So that, you might say, okay, fine, we're always machmir, right? We always try to not kill somebody, so fine. So we don't want you to kill him, and someone else, if he kills him, we don't want to put him to death, fine. But there are other nafkaminas, such as you're pasul eidos, right? If you're a treifa, because you're not alive, or not fully alive. Right? I heard, and I can't confirm this story, but kach shamati midei pam, that Rav Aaron Soloveitchik was convinced that he was pasul eidos for the last 20 years of his life, because he had a pacemaker, right? So he's a treifa. I mean, his heart doesn't work, right? It's a pretty classic case of treifa. And that's a really interesting question, right? Because look, it's true that he's going to live, but it's also equally true that he's not naturally living, right? He's artificially being kept alive by a pacemaker, which is controlling his heart. So, right, if you think that treifa simply means you're going to live through the year, so okay, so he's not a treifa. But on the other hand, right, if you think that treifa has formal rules, and you say, look, there is even a scientific basis to him being a treifa, meaning he's not living naturally, right? He's living because he's being kept alive by modern science, but he couldn't under normal circumstances. So then, right, you would say he's a treifa even though he's going to live. So, when it comes to treifas by animals, people almost chad v'chalak say, there, whatever you think by lice, right, that's halacha Moshe Sinai. Really, there's a huge... I recently had this on the Makor sheet, then I just forget it. It's like a 5-page tshuva by Rav Moshe. and 3 places in the Chazon Ish. But by people, they're much more reticent to say that, right? Because if it's a treifa, you can't be mechal Shabbos for him, right? Things like that. You don't want to do that, right? Pikuach nefesh, right? People are a little bit, right, not so comfortable to just say, let's throw caution to the wind and say it's an objective halacha. The third case is the most troublesome, right? Which was the baby, right? So here, if you look, for example, in encyclopedia, yeah.
Does that mean that, like, if Aaron had gotten sick on Shabbos, he wouldn't have gone to the hospital?
What? No, I don't think we paskin this way. I'm just saying, like,
If you said that, Aaron paskin
around Salvachik. But again, I don't think that would have been the case because the Lamaisa, you can be most of life to him. Again, I think he was machmir. I think he was machmir by things that are not pikuach nefesh, but pikuach nefesh were always mekel. Which brings us to the next case, which is the 8th month case, right? Here, if you paskin like Chazal science, you're going to let the baby die, even though it's really, really easy, right? I was born in the 8th month, right? I'm alive, right? I'll tell you, there are weird shitas, or Schechter, when he gives this share, tells a story that there are achronim who think that if a baby is born in the 8th month, since Chazal say he's not viable, he doesn't become halachically, I told this to Benjamin, I think, right? Doesn't become halachically considered alive. He's not yotzei midei safek nefil until he's 20 years old. So Rishachter said this position as a joke, because that's an absurd position. When I was 18, I was also alive, I'm pretty sure. But he said he had someone in his class who was a preemie, and he was 18 years old. And he freaked out, because oh my God, I'm dead. And then 2 years later, and it was 20th birthday, he comes over to Rosh Hashanah and he's like, Rebbe, wish me a mazel tov, I'm alive. And Rosh Hashanah's like, what are you talking about? You've been in my share for 3 years. He's like, don't you remember that you told me that I'm dead? I'm like, he's like, I didn't think anyone took that seriously. But we know people can live. So if you look in the encyclopedia of Medical Ethics by Avram Steinberg, he says, Ruba de Ruba of responsible poskim say that in that case, B'chal Shabbos to save the kid because you can. Because we know that Bisman is a Hanami. So I don't care. 7th month, 8th month, 9th month. Forget Chazal science. Whatever their science was, it's not true, right? We save a lot of people that should have died, right? 100 years ago or 200 years ago, right? Mortality rate of babies and mothers has gone down very, very low. It's like 1 in 1,000 births now, or 1 in 10,000 births, when it used to be, 30% or some absurd number. And why? Because it's pikuach nefesh. And no one's willing to say about pikuach nefesh, let's just assume this is a formal rule. I mean, some people are, right? In fact, in the BDD article, if you look in the B'chol Derech HaDe'eu, so someone quotes them in Chassid Yitzchak as saying, we don't save the baby. And the respondent is like, please read to the end of Chuvos, because yes, in paragraph 18, he raises a possibility that you shouldn't save him. Then in possibly 20 and 21, he's like, what are you talking about? Of course you save the baby. No one ever had the Havamina that when it came to that we were going to let a baby die. So, that being the case, right, it does seem to be that the case-by-case position is actually what we take, many poskim take, right? Because, look, a lot of poskim pretty much divide across the line by the lice case. Because, you kill a lice, you don't kill a lice on Shabbos, allow some Shabbos. Fine, you think Chazal are right, you think the science is wrong, you think that science is wrong and Chazal are right, you think this is a formal rule, you think it was a Misora, you think it's about whether something is near a lion. Okay, whatever. You see the whole range of positions, right? You get to the other extreme when there's pikuach nefesh, right? The 8th month baby. No responsible posek comes and says, Chazal said that the baby is going to live. Let the baby die, right? No responsible posek is going to say that because it's pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh were always machmir. So I don't care what your ideological hang-ups are in general, right? You'll simply say, look, the baby is going to live. And it's going to live. What are you telling me it's not going to live? Okay, it couldn't live before. Now it can. No one is, no responsible posek is willing to say we let the baby die. And then we have treifos, where, right, basically everyone, even responsible poskim who are all into science say, look, there's a lot of evidence that treifot is halacha Moshe Sinai, right? And it has nothing to do with whether the baby is actually going to live or not. In fact, it's explicit in the Rambam. It's not like the Rambam rejected science. He just thought that treifot was halacha Moshe Sinai, right? So you have basically, right, one type of case where everyone basically says, look, reject the halacha as it stands and go by the science. And that's usually like Bikuach Nefesh cases. On the other extreme, you have the case of treifot where pretty much everyone says, right, it is halacha Moshe Sinai. And then you have the lice case where people argue. I think, Lifianis Daiti, I think the evidence points to the fact that it really is a Mitzios issue, and therefore it should be Aser. But there are many prominent poskim who think that's not the case. I forgot to mention, Ram Nechemi also in his critique says that's the case. Or you can read the piece. Right, he also agrees that was Rosh Hashanah Paskin, or Rosh Hashanah Paskin. Okay, you have a question.
In theory, so let's put treifot aside. Let's say we have the lice and we have the baby. So in theory, I would think that any given posek should pass consistently in both cases. As unless we say pikuach nefesh as a klal,
so I'd say
a unique case. In theory, we should say that however understand the Rosh decides in the one should be the same the other.
So in theory, yes. Right? If you hold like Rabbi Yashiv, no. I mean, if you think it's fake, right, then you're machmir in both directions, and obviously you wouldn't, right? I think any of the vadai positions should, in theory, equate between the lice case and the 8th month case, right? If you hold suffix, obviously not, because suffix kina, so you'd be machmir, and suffix pikuach nefesh should be machmir on pikuach nefesh. The other way out of it, right, is to assume that what, right? Why do we save somebody's life on Shabbos?
For the next Shabbos.
Well, the Gemara gives 5 reasons, but right, l'maskana, the Gemara says v'chai bohem. Right, but it also says, right, the second to last answer is Chalav Shabbos Achas Kadesh Yekamu Shabbos is Harbe, right? And la halacha, right, it's not clear. We reject that one, right? Really, make it and we paskin v'chai b'hem. But the Ramban famously holds. Take a step back, right? Are you allowed to say Mechal Shabbos to save an ubar in the stomach? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, right. That you can. Why? Right? You definitely can. Why?
Next Shabbos.
So, according to the Rambam, a fetus is considered alive. And it has been Mechai B'hem, it's already alive. Then why are you not Chayiv Misa for killing a fetus? It's Gzeres HaKasav, right? But it's murder, right? Therefore the Rambam says very simply, Mechai B'hem. The Ramban, according to Bahag, says no, a Ubar is not alive, but Chalav Shabbos Achas K'Yishu Shabbos is Harbe. The Rosh says it's a non-issue because any time the baby is in jeopardy, so is the mother, right? So therefore it's always Pikuach Nefesh of the mother anyways. But leaving that aside, right, the Ramban says no, by Ubar, in Achanami the Ubar is not alive. But Chalav Shabbos Achas Kadeshim Akamu Shabbos is Harbe. So in theory you can distinguish along those lines because you can say, look, fine, you want to say the baby's not alive, right, for whatever reason. But it's no worse than an Ubar because if practically, with science, I can make the baby live, I know I can make the baby live, right? Then Chalav Shabbos Achas Kadesh Shabbos Harbe. That's one way of doing it. Or the way that almost all of the Achronim do it, right? Or a lot of the Achronim do it is I pull in suffix and I say what? How do you know the baby is conceived? How do you know this is 8th month of conception? You can never really be quite sure when the baby was conceived, which is true, right? Even nowadays, right? How do scientists assess the age of a fetus? Do you know this? They count from the woman's last period, right? There's no good scientific way of figuring out the exact. I mean, there is, but very rarely do we actually go for the exact day, right? Really, the pachot yoter, you go in and you ask when the woman's last period was, and you count from then, right? And you approximate. And we try to use machines that say how old is the baby, but we would go in and some days Meir would have developed his age, and some days he'd be a few days ahead of, right? And it would change, right? It'd be then the due date changes. It went from April 22nd to April 20th, to whatever, right? And then he was born, April 4th. It's not, right? Even with modern science, right? It's hard. So a lot of, right? So one way of saying is no, right? That case is also Tamun B'Safeg, right? So you can sort of sidestep the ideological issues, right? So, while I think in theory you're right? Psaka is never quite that neat because, first of all, you can come up with different halacha categories like Chalav Shabbos Achas don't require you to make claims about the legal viability of the baby, but only the practical viability of the baby, right? And you can also simply say, that's in theory what I would paskin, but I think it's impossible to ever know if the baby's 8th month, and then you can hide behind that veil and limaisa paskin that you're allowed to save the baby, right? So while in theory it should be that neat, it's not that neat, because halacha is never quite that neat. There's always a million moves that you can choose to make. Okay, so to summarize what we had, we asked the theoretical question of how does halacha relate when it contradicts, the science that is based on is contradicted. And the range, we said, in theory, and in theoretical shaila, is to say everywhere from. Halachic shailas always are based on science. If the science is contradicted, we reject it, which is basically what the Pachad Yitzchak sounds like, at least in the case of lice. All the way to the other extreme, we have the people who say, look, science is wrong, which is the Rabbi Yehuda Brill, quoted in the Pachad Yitzchak, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. In the middle, we have the people who maintain halacha, but either reinterpret it by saying, halacha didn't mean it, all it meant was that you don't perceive them procreating, or nishtanu hateva, so their lies did, but ours practically don't. Right? Those are ideologically different. Right? One is saying Chazal never made a mistake. Right? One is saying Chazal never made a mistake. Our science changed. One is making the ideological claim that Chazal never meant it scientifically. You have Rabbi Kaplan quoting of Dessler who said no. It's really halachah Moshe Sinai, and the reason is just. The reason was wrong. They're not tied to the reason. Chazal may make a mistake, but in halacha they're not. You have the suffix position, which is Rabbi Yashiv, right? I'm not really sure, and I'll be machmer unless push comes to shove, and then I'll be makil. And that's basically the range of positions. You find them all by lice, because lice is not such a big deal, right? Then you come to treifos, and by treifos, really pretty much everyone goes with the Masorah, not because they think that science can't be right and all can be wrong, but simply they don't think that's the category we're dealing with. That treifos are not really about science. You might think they are, but there are many mashmoyot in the Gemara, and it's explicit in the Rambam that treifot are not about science, and therefore, despite the fact I would have thought it is, so at least treifot by animal, we go by halacha Moshe Sinai. But once you get to human life, it gets trickier, because by people, you don't really want to say that a treifa of a person is, someone who has a pacemaker is a treifa, and you can't, if you kill him, you're not chayiv misa and things like that. So their poskim are really much more reticent to say it, but thank God it doesn't really come up so much, right? Because we don't have Sanhedrin, so it doesn't really make a difference as much. We're always going to save their life misafek, and we're not being mechayiv anyone misa. But there is this apocryphal story, I don't know whether it's true, that Rabbi Jonanthan Zirirng Lice thought it was possible Eidos. And then really there's the 8th month baby, which really pushes in the opposite direction, where everyone has the feeling that it can't be that we're going to let someone die because of a formal rule. So either you explain it in a way and say, look, it's always a suffix, and suffix being nefesh is docha Shabbos, or you say practically, yes, in theory I would say that you should let the baby die, but since I never know whether it's an 8th month baby, misafek, pikuach nefesh docha Shabbos, or you say that, look, the chai b'hem doesn't apply because, yes, halachically the baby isn't considered alive, but has potential to live, and therefore chal alav Shabbos achas, and there's a whole sort of host of different decisions we can make, but all pretty much come to the same conclusion, because by pikuach nefesh, no responsible posek is going to let the baby die when you know practically the baby can live. You can explain it however you want, but this is not my summary, right? This is, again, Encyclopedia of Medical Ethics, Jewish Medical Ethics, right? That's a summary. No, Ruba the Ruba poskim say you can save the baby. Okay, so that basically is the summary of the issues. There are many, many, many cases. The last thing I want to read you, and this is from the last few pages of Rav Neri Gutel's book. Here it is. So Neri Gutel basically comes to the same conclusion that I do, that it's a case-by-case basis. He suggests a set of 7 rules of how you know whether it's the type of case that goes by Masorah or the type that's actually based on science that you change. These are his rules. 1, you look at the Makor halacha and u'matzi lo makra aflo b'halacha Moshe Sinai. So first thing you do is you check, does this halacha seem to be halacha Moshe Sinai or not? Right? So we saw, right? Treifa seems to be. Several people claim that the case is true by lice also, that's halacha Moshe Sinai. There's no evidence of that in the Gemara. So if it's halacha Moshe Sinai, or it seems to be based on a pasuk like a drasha, so then, right, that's the most likely candidate for saying we follow it even if the science is wrong. If it's not, we can start talking about the possibility that the science is wrong because the halacha isn't passed down. The halacha was an assessment of reality. Condition 2, Ein midubar betchum sheugdar v'shato kisakana pikuach nefesh. Adara ata midubar b'sad chayim. The second one said pikuach nefesh breaks all rules, right? Because you have to be 100% sure that science is wrong and that that's relevant to let somebody die. No posek is willing to do that because halacha tells you that suffix pikuach nefesh is docha everything, and therefore when the pikuach nefesh, right, we push always in the direction of whatever is going to allow you to save the person. 3. Hamidubar b'tofa'a ba'alat tfutza klal olamit asher ena mitzimtzemet limigzar oh makem mesuyam. Third thing he points out is that if something is a universal halacha, like by changing the halacha in this thing, we would also change whole tracks of halacha. So there's always a bias towards assuming that the halacha won't change. For example, all of kashrus, right? Much of the rules of kashrus, right? This we didn't get into. It's really complicated, but right, just to mention it, right? Much of the rules of kashrus are based on the assumption that certain things are balea, that certain things have taste, when often it's not true. But but the assumption tends to be that we keep hilchos kashrus as they are because it's formal dinim from the Gemara. And if anyone were going to get up and say no, it's actually based on just taste, right? All of hilchos kashrus would basically collapse on its head. Right, Rav Dani screams about this all the time, that we are machmer, like a sheet of the rush, that there's something called zeya, right? If there's steam of treif food, that it makes things treif. So we have this problem in factories that sometimes there's treifos, there's zeya of treifos or zeya of milk and meat, whatever. So now how do we kasher the kalem? We run steam of ammonia through it, which halachically works because we paskin that zeya, right, just like the zeya of the treifos got into the walls, so to the zeya of the ammonia gets into the walls and makes it no sin tam of gam, and therefore it's fine, right? What's the problem? If zeya existed, we would all die, right? Because if zeya actually existed, right, the ammonia would have gotten into our food and we would die, right? So Dani, yells about this a lot because there's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance going on there, right? Because we try to solve the zeya of the rush that we don't really believe in by using zeya that if we believed in zeya would kill us, but we don't really believe in zeya. But what can you do? That's hilchos kashrus, right? Hilchos kashrus, we're not really willing to jettison all of hilchos kashrus, so we assume that some of it is formal. Fourth, ישנה הסכמה מדעית רפואית כללית ואחידה בדבר הממצאים והמשוררים כיום הזה ואין מכחיש להם, right? If the next issue you have to look at is whether it's agreed upon science, right? If it's not agreed upon science, obviously we're going to be more likely to keep the halacha. If it's everyone says that this is the case and halacha was wrong, we're more likely to either change the halacha or claim nishtana atefa rather than. But we're going to have to do something, right? As opposed to having the out of saying it's a suffix in science. Fifth, the fifth thing is that the evidence that we have is direct evidence and not indirect, right? Science, which is only by implication, we're going to take less seriously than science which has already been proven, right? Hypotheses based on speculation, based on other cases, are obviously going to be less likely to push us to either reject the halacha or claim nishtana ateva, and we might just reject the science. But if it's a direct analysis, we're more likely to either change the halacha or claim nishtana ateva. Shishit hamudubar b'shinui ikvi l'shipur l'tova v'lenosiga. Right. Again, we have to look on whether it's a shinui ikvi, right? Whether there's ways of explaining this sort of systematically or not. And the seventh is right, and the last thing, which we've already mentioned, is the possibility that different halachos are just different, right? And this is what we already talked about, right? Is that besides these general 6 rules, it may just be that different halachos are different, right? And the standards for being alive for Shabbos are different than the standards of Yibum, which are different from the standards of Eidush, which are different from the standards of Yerusha, etc., etc. And different categories are going to have different ones. Okay, so that's basically the summary. If you want to look more, look at any of these sources I put on the bottom of the page. Like I said, I think the conclusion that comes out from most sources is that people take a case-by-case basis. And in each case, decide whether the halacha is likely to be formal or not, whether it's really based on science or not. And, Pikuach Nefesh throws an axe into everything. Okay, and that is it for now.